What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, reviewing today, Oninaki. Have you ever found yourself in one of those weird circumstances where you're playing a game and you're kind of having fun with it, but simultaneously there's aspects of it that are just really bad? Perhaps it has a strange art style or a really bad setting, or just something about the universe doesn't make sense. Because at its core, there are some major flaws inside the center of Oninaki that I just have never been able to get past. So today we're going to be talking about this game and looking at its cool combat, what's so great about the leveling system, and why overall you probably shouldn't buy it. This is actually the latest project by Tokyo RPG Factory. This is a studio that's technically owned by Square Enix. A couple years ago, Square Enix realized that some of their classic RPGs were some of their very best work, so they got a bunch of very talented developers from all over Japan, put them into one room, and sort of told them, alright, start making games. Their first project, I Am Setsuna, was very fun. Their follow-up game, Lost Sphere, was a little bit more peculiar, and then this one is a completely different direction entirely. As you could tell, this is not your standard role-playing game. Instead, this is a hack-and-slash action RPG, but one that has a lot of very interesting grinding elements in it that I think really work. Let me just begin with what the biggest problem of this game is, that way we can get to what's great after it. But the fundamental problem with this game, and the reason that I think it does not work overall, is that the story here is absolutely depressing. Essentially, we're playing as this guy called a Watcher, and our job is simultaneously being like a detective and a priest. We help people deal with the dead and send off the lost spirits, but simultaneously we also do things like investigate serial killers and track down criminals. You kind of do everything at once. But the big problem with this is that since you are supposed to just handle all these duties of the dead, you spend a lot of time talking with ghosts. You see, in this universe, essentially, being dead is not quite the same thing. You go what's called beyond the veil. Once you're there, you have to sort of give up on life in order to be reincarnated. Now that may sound a little bit bleak, but in this world, it's actually considered a positive. Dying is kind of seen as like a good thing, even though you're still bleeding out and frickin' falling over dead in a horrible circumstance. Essentially, once you go beyond the veil and you accept your death, you're supposed to be reincarnated. And it's actually like the entire religion. Everybody in this world is constantly talking about inevitably dying. But the weirdest part about this game is that everybody just accepts it. Everybody is constantly just being like, yep, I might just commit suicide next week. I mean, literally, you deal with tons of suicide in this game. You find kids who are dead and the parents decide to commit suicide. You find suicide cults with dead kids and you have to talk to the dead kids. You find suicide priests. There's like evil doctors who are trying to kill people. That way they can try and bring people back to the dead before they get a chance to be reincarnated. I mean, this game is so freaking dark. I'm somebody who quite often can enjoy a story like this. I can really just kind of dive into the meat of it and find that little shining gem at the heart of it. But here, there is absolutely no hope. Everybody is dead, everybody is unhappy, everybody is screwed. But you know what? That's just kind of this universe. And to me, that is a fundamental flaw. Now we're going to get to that in a second, we're going to get back to this, but let's talk a little bit about the combat because it actually ties into it. So since we are a Watcher, our duty is actually to send off the dead, to try and help people make peace in whatever way we can. And for some reason, this basically means that sometimes we're going to be fighting giant penguins and evil seals. And yes, I have no idea why, but that's absolutely what's happening. So basically, as we're going through all these different lands and trying to track down different mysteries, you're going to be fighting tons and tons of monsters in your path. But this is definitely the very best part of the game. It's definitely definitely the part that shines the brightest, is just getting to hack and slash everything around you. So obviously our character on his own is a very good swordsman. He's trained for years and years and years to be able to battle the forces of evil in literal hand-to-hand combat. But there's an extra twist to this. So whenever a spirit dies and is just supposed to move on, there are certain people who, when they pass away, they forget that they were ever human. They get stuck between the realms of the living and the dead. And they call these people demons. They're basically empowered spirits that have now just become weaponized. They're not really what I would call sentient. They're not really self-aware. They don't even really know what they are at this point. They are just weapons. But each one has a different attunement. So I can have a demon that'll give me automatic crossbow powers when I equip her. So I can do giant blast attacks on groups of enemies at once. And do jump attacks where I can actually slow down in midair like the Matrix and pew-pew people. Or I can do my very favorite one is this lady who gives me katana powers. And I have this giant blade of my hand that can shoot energy or do dash attacks. There's also people that'll have like a huge scythe and let me do like giant area effect attacks, so when I'm surrounded I can push all the enemies away and try and heal myself. Now what you'll notice is that at the beginning a lot of these demons are very, very weak. You have to use them a bunch because while our character himself manages to level up and get more health and more ability to carry a lot of healing potions, more importantly you need to level up specific demons. By using them in combat, you get a bunch of stones that let you go into their talent trees and unlock specific gifts. These can be extra skills, these can be all sorts of interesting abilities that make it where, like at one point I unlocked something deep into one of the talent trees that essentially made it where the longer I could go without taking damage, the more damage I would deal, which meant that if I was really good at ducking and dodging and constantly just rolling out of the way, I would hurt people more and more and more. And I love that concept. I love the idea of managing to customize my weapons in a way, and it kind of made me enjoy this universe for what it is. The story is awful. I honestly think that this is some of the worst writing I've seen in an RPG in years. But I managed to get past that, because at the very center of Oninaki, when you get past all the clouds of bad writing and really goofy voice acting, you find something that manages to be stark in contrast, which is that there is a certain amount of peace in this world without it. While everybody around you is accepting their death and drinking poison and talking about the great beyond in the most horrible terms possible and locking people up in prison so they live for 80 years and aren't allowed to be reincarnated, there is something beyond that, which is there is a certain amount of love for the blade. There's a very passionate center to this, where you can tell that the people who invented this combat cared about what they were making. It's very nice to be able to have a chance to level up and go on a little side quest. You can unlock new demons by actually walking between the paths of the living and the dead and discovering more of these people and getting their skills. And even if you actually work hard enough, when you level up your demons, they will tell you stories themselves. You can unlock their memories and give them a chance to find peace and no longer be the lost and no longer be the demons. There is something that sort of transcends Oninaki. I really wish this game wasn't $50, because if this were $10, I would tell everybody to buy it. If you do end up finding a copy of it for cheap, I would say skip the cutscenes. I can't believe I'm having to say that in an RPG, but that's the worst part of this. When you manage to just stick to the dungeons though and really kind of just embellish all the really fun moments that are just about hacking and slashing and trying to dodge that next big counterattack from a supercharged enemy, that is when this game shines. And I still think that despite its issues, that is something that manages to be very, very admirable. Okay, so we've heard some good and some bad, but let's go over the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Oninaki a 6.5 out of 10. I'm very interested at this point in Tokyo RPG Factory as a studio. They managed to put these projects out at a relatively good pace. I mean, at this point it seems like every year and a half we get a new game, and each one manages to have a new combat system, a new story, all new music, so even though I didn't like this game, I can honestly tell you right up front that whatever it turns out the next one's going to be, I'm probably gonna buy it, because these are something that managed to be very, very interesting. I like that. I like somebody who's out here trying to do the right thing and bring back some classic action, even if they don't always manage to nail it. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Throughout this video, my kitty cat keeps meowing, so if you hear that, I apologize. I'm trying to edit around it as best I can, but he's a total little attention buddy right now. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.